give to someone that knows someone who is grieving? Because the reality is that some people, they don't mean any harm. They just don't know what to say.
I think for the most part, yeah, so just like the individual that has lost someone is kind of at a loss for words to express how they feel, the same holds true for the person that's trying to provide them support and sympathy. Normally, they want to say something to be supportive, but not sure about how to say it or what, in fact, to say. To be very honest, you just express that.
Right,
Um,
that's good.
Explaining to them, hi, I'm sorry for your loss. I don't know exactly what to say or what to do to make it any easier for you, but just letting you know that I'm here.
Right.
And at a time like this, for some people, certain things work. For some people, other things work. I don't know what works for you. So just communicate to me whatever you need and I'm available. That's usually the best advice I would offer as far as providing support and saying something to someone. Less is better. And just being genuine with how you feel. I don't know what to say or do, so just let me know, but just know that I'm here. It's very simple.
Dr. Moore, I really, really like that because I feel like I've been on both sides. And I think
Mhm.
that question can help so many people in so many different areas, whether it is someone who's lost a child or, any area. Sometimes you want to be there for someone, but you don't know what to say and you don't
Right.
mean any harm. And so I think it's important to be honest so that the person with you, the person that you're with can
Mhm.
understand, listen, she don't really, he or she don't know really what to do, but they know that you're hurting and they want to love on you, but they don't know how. So you
Exactly.
just tell me what I need to do and I'm here. Or if you don't want me to do anything, I don't know what to do, but I'm here. So I think that is really, really good. And I've heard that so many times, like, oh, this person said that, and that was just, it hurt so bad during that time.
Mhm.
Not realizing that maybe the person loved you so much they didn't know what to say, so they just said the first thing that came off the top of their head or something that everybody says
Right.
during that time, and they
Right.
don't mean any harm and they really wasn't thinking. So I love the just be honest and just say, hey, I don't really know what to say, but I'm here, and less
Right.
is more.
Less is more.
And
That's
so
right.
that's good. So my next question is, why do you feel counseling is important for someone who's grieving?
I think it helps to have a perspective and point of view as well as support from someone who's not emotionally attached to the situation. I know a lot of times, especially from a cultural perspective, people of color will seek out support from family members. And while that's great, because of their emotional connection, sometimes it's just as difficult to go to them and kind of vent and talk about everything that's going on because there's an emotional connection. Whereas, and even with them giving feedback, it may not necessarily be objective because they're a family member, right? So going to a
Wow.
counselor, you get someone's input, feedback, and support that's not emotionally connected to the loss. They may be able to relate to loss, but not necessarily that specific loss. Um, a counselor will also be able to kind of gauge how you're doing from moment to moment based off of the work that you're doing in therapy. And so, again, just having that professional perspective and someone to really kind of normalize what the grief process is because it's so different for so many different people. But I think a counselor, a therapist can really break it down for you and explain the grief stages, um, talk to you about a timeline because timelines are different depending on the person, depending on the loss, right? So I think a professional would have an objective kind of way of approaching it and supporting you and also giving you the feedback that you need to kind of work through the grief and the bereavement.
That is good. I know I believe in counselors, but I never thought about like for example, when you're with your family, it's just so easy to be like, I understand, or to
Right.
say I understand and everybody else they don't understand. But they could
Yes.
actually offer a different perspective and help you to start the healing process because they are not actually in the situation.
That's right.
So I think that makes sense, and hopefully this interview would encourage someone who may be grieving during this time to seek out counseling.
Hmm.
And so, my last question is: do you feel that writing is therapy? And if you do, what are the benefits of writing during a time like that?
So that's another thing, a therapist, another benefit of a therapist, right? So they'll probably give you homework assignments and things to do
Okay.
that are practical, that really are fundamentally helping you grieve in a way that's hands-on and applicable from day to day, giving you different things to think about and write out. Writing really is a way to get whatever thoughts that are on your mind out on paper. So a
Okay.
lot of times, I mean, just like with anxiety, people that kind of ruminate and think about things over and over again, we encourage counselors and therapists will encourage people to write it down, make your things to do list. That way, it's out of your head and you won't forget anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The cycle and think about it over and over again. It's helpful to see it on paper. The same holds true with the grief process, right? You're having these feelings, these thoughts, these emotions. Well, writing it down is a way to process it on paper. Just like if you're talking about it in therapy, it's a way to process it out loud.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to get your feelings out of your body in your head, right? It's a way to get it out onto something, whether it's out loud or whether it's on paper. In addition to that, you can kind of use the writing and journaling as a narrative of your process. So let's say we look back on what I journaled a month ago
Mm-hmm.
and then what I journaled today, right?
Right.
Me and the counselor can talk about the changes and the differences. And again, the grief process, it's not one stage, two stage, three stage. It's five different stages, but they're not like you have to complete one to get to the next. They're fluid.
Mm.
You have anger, you have denial, you have bargaining, you have sadness, and you have acceptance. Those are the five phases and stages of grief, and people kind of use those words interchangeably. Like instead of saying sadness, they might say depressive symptoms or something like that.
Right.
But really, they're five phases, and you don't necessarily go through one and then you're done and go to the next. No, today I may be angry, but tomorrow I may accept everything.
Mm-hmm.
Then I may go from being accepting to in shock again and in denial. Then I may go to bargaining, like, God, why did you do this? I
Mm-hmm.
can't trust you to give me support anymore, right? So when you're going through those phases and stages, it's helpful to write all that down to see how you're doing. And journaling just kind of gives you a way to actually see how you're growing. So you're getting better, right, through the process, but it's kind of hard to see sometimes, right?
Right. Right.
Look at writing and what you're journaling, you realize it's a growing process. I do have my good and bad days, but I'm constantly going up, right? So I have my hills and valleys, but the progression is upward, which is what you'll end up seeing when you're journaling, writing, getting those thoughts out, and processing it out loud with a counselor.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking this time out. I wanted to add the perspective of a counselor during this time. There's a lot of things that's going on, and
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to encourage others and anyone that is grieving, just help to answer some questions for if you're grieving or you know someone who is grieving. So I want to thank you for your time, and we appreciate you joining us today, Dr. Moore.
Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to share in this moment. I appreciate you having me.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Okay. Hello and welcome to Cassandra's Corner. I am so excited you all are here. We have a special interview today. I have a special guest. The guest that I have today, her name is Rachel Luckey. Welcome to my corner, Rachel Luckey.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. Before we get started, we have commercials and flyers that are out. But how do you feel about introducing yourself to everybody? Just kind of giving us what you do professionally and things that you offer.
Okay, well, thank you, Cassandra. My name is Rachel Luckey. I am a professional in human resources. I've been in the human resource field for about 20 something years. I am currently the Chief Human Resource Officer for Cincinnati Hamilton County Community Action Agency. Um, so, with human resources, I'm responsible for employee relations. I'm responsible for staffing and recruiting. I'm responsible for the human capital of the company. And the portion that I like the best is I'm responsible for the organizational and professional development. So I do a lot of training and professional development for the organization, and I do that both internally and externally as well.
Okay, so Miss Rachel Luckey, you said that you do professional development and training for organizations. So as far as organizations are concerned, do you just do that for like businesses, or do you also do that for like churches?
Good question. I do it for businesses, and I've been a corporate trainer for many years, since 1997, but I also do it for organizations. I've done women's conferences, I've done leadership conferences. I do it for churches as well. Many organizations are finally realizing that we can use the same strategies that organizations are using, and truthfully, the principles that organizations are using for their professional development are training, are biblical principles. So I do training for both organizations, secular as well as religious organizations as well. And I do DISC personality profiles, and many organizations are finding out that they can use that as part of their marriage counseling.
Oh, wow.
As well. So,
Well, I wanted to get that information out so that everybody can know who you are and what you offer professionally. But if you all haven't figured it out, this is actually my mother. So I'm enjoying calling her Rachel. So this is my mother. And although those are the things that she offered professionally, we have to have her on the show to maybe share some words of wisdom, or give some advice and things like that, as far as your profession is concerned. But we're actually here for something a little different, and I'm so excited. You have a book out, and the name of the book is Good Grief, and we will have the information at the end of the video how people can purchase the video of the book, and how they can get in contact with you for booking and things like that. But I really wanted, there's so many things that's going on right now, and I just thought that this interview was so appropriate for right now, because so many people are experiencing different things, not just death but disappointment, having different things to come up in their life, and having to adjust and things like that. And so I thought, I have to have Mom on the show, because she had this book out, and me and my sister and my husband and my father, we read the book, and I was like, we need to get this out. We need to let people know about this book. And so what I would like to do is, if you could just kind of let us know what this book is about, and how, when you see the title, Good Grief, how did you come up with this title, and just give us what we can expect, and what is this about?
okay. Well, thank you. Well, 2019 was a very difficult year for our family. We actually, I should say, the end of 2018 and 2019 was a very difficult year for our family. We actually lost 6 immediate family members, one of which at the beginning of the year was my own son. And it was 2 weeks after after my nephew was killed, in a car accident. My son had just, it was the week before Christmas that my son needed a heart and a kidney both. And 2 weeks before Christmas, my son got on the list, and that was a miracle in and of itself that he got on the list for both the kidney and the heart transplant. Prior to that, for the about a year and a half, we were traveling back and forth to Columbus, Ohio, and then consequently to Lexington, Kentucky, because Cincinnati did not have a facility that provided both a kidney and a heart, two major organs. Well, 2 weeks before his death, he got on the list and he was approved for both the kidney and his heart. And 2 weeks later, he dies.
How old was he?
He was 30 years old when he passed away, and of course, still my baby. It was a tragic loss to me, because many people will say, "Well, you knew he had a rare heart condition. Were you not expecting that?" But I tell you, we were not expecting that for many reasons.
Can I interrupt you? And this is just raw. We're not editing. That's so interesting because people ask me the same thing. Like, were you not prepared? Did you not know that this could happen one day? Like, literally the same question.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting.
Absolutely. And you know it's going to happen one day, but you didn't, we were not prepared nor expecting. As a matter of fact, we were preparing in the opposite direction.
Right.
Since he did make the list, we were preparing our home for the long road to recovery, making plans for him. I was making plans on my job to spend time in Lexington with him in recovery. We knew he would be in a nursing home for about 12 weeks. I had already made arrangements on my job, preparing someone to take my place. On my job, I was working for Xavier University at that time, so everything that we were doing was preparing for his life.
Right.
So no, we did not expect for him to die, and consequently, we did not expect for him to die in such a hurry.
Right.
So no, nothing prepared me for that, and the way that I got the title to my book was the night of the funeral. As you know, the funerals, prior to the funeral, you have visitors, you have family, everyone comes to see you, you get so many flowers, you get calls, so you're very busy going through that period that to me, you're grieving, but you're actually not grieving.
And let me add that you are one of 15.
15.
My dad is one of 16, and our family is huge, and they're loving and protective. So they was definitely making sure that she was okay.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it was probably over 100 people at the hospital. So when you say that you were getting calls and you were getting that, I just wanted to paint the picture of what it was like. It wasn't like, 10, 15 people.
Oh, no.
Our family really, really showed up and poured their love out.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
And even when I returned to work, I must say, and I received so many condolences at home, but even when I returned to work, there was a stack of cards on my desk at least this high. And I didn't even know that many people at the facility knew me or at the university knew me. But I think because of the training and professional development that I facilitated there, more people knew me than I know them.
Right,
so
right.
It was just overwhelming, the amount of love that we received. But I can tell you that after all of that, after the funeral, after the burial, when you go home, it feels like you go home alone. And that night is, as you recall, immediately after the funeral, even you and your family, because you had been there prior to the death, you had to leave and go home. So I went home, and again, my husband was there, my grandson was there, and some of the family members was there. But when it came time to go to bed, it felt like the heaviest weight. I can't even explain the amount of sorrow that you have when you lose someone. And now at this point, you have to realize that I had lost my mom, I had lost my dad, I had lost a sister, I had lost a brother, but I cannot compare the same amount of sorrow to the loss of your son or your child. It's just a totally different experience. And yours may not be your child. It may be yours may be your mother. It may even be an aunt. But it was just something that I never experienced before. And I went into the bathroom and I was laying on the floor crying. And it felt like I was hyperventilating and could not breathe. And I laid in the fetal position on my bathroom floor and just really not breathing and crying. And the Lord spoke to me and said, this is going to be good grief. And I'm going to be honest with you. It didn't comfort me. It made me mad.
Right.
It angered me.
Right.
It really did. I'm thinking, how in the world, this is the time I need God most.
Right.
Why would he tell me that something good could come out of this much pain, this much anguish? What in the world good could come out of this? Right. But I was so angry, Cassandra, that I stopped crying and got in the bed. And I got in the bed mad, you know, and but I kept thinking to myself, good grief. I'm going to look this up, but I was so angry. And the next morning, it was funny because, and this is a true story, it was funny because I got up to call to see if Cassandra and her family had made it back to South Carolina safely, because I knew she had something that she had to do. And I said, Cassandra, I think God has given me a book. And when I said good, she said grief. Because she was telling me that God has given her a message. And I said, no way, Cassandra. You know, I said, did I tell you about the book?
Right.
And she was asking me, Mom, did I tell you about the message? And neither one of us had spoken to each other.
Right.
So she had her husband confirm what she had written down, and she had written down the exact same title. And she said, you know what, Mom? You use it for your book, and God will give me another message, because you were scheduled to preach at another church the next week.
Yep.
And you thought that you were going to preach good grief, but God had given it to me as a name of a title for the book.
Yeah. So that's how you had the title of the book. I remember when we were in the hospital, one thing, I hadn't even talked to you about this, but just explaining the whole process, when we were there, it was so painful. We all had our own experience. But one thing I remember you saying, because I also have one son, and everybody says he looks like him. So that's tough.
Right.
But just, and I had a close relationship with him, because
that's right.
I'm the oldest. And so, of course, being the oldest, it was like, Angelo, you're doing this and you're doing that, checking on him. And so, to me, he was my baby. But I remember you saying, I didn't know my heart could feel this sad. I think that's what you said. Or, yeah, or my heart could hurt this bad. Or, yeah. And that just, oh, during the time, because we literally watched him transition.
Absolutely.
And I wondered, like, should I have done that? Like,
Right.
because of
Right.
course, when you have all of those memories, of that, and I remember all of it.
Right.
And so I remember that, and to see you do this, because I remember nights where you would be up and you would text me, and it would be so late.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, she's not sleeping, but you were writing. How in the world did you push through this? Because I know we all were crying. We all were having days, we still do, having days where we felt like we could do nothing. Like we didn't want to do anything anymore.
Right.
And to some people that might sound like ridiculous, but you know, he was the only boy.
Right.
And and even though he was the middle child, it was like he was the baby.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
you don't think, you just think that people are going to be here forever.
Absolutely.
And so when it happened, for me personally, it just felt like everything stopped.
Absolutely.
And so I'm trying to figure out, how in the world did you push through to get this done? Like, it's here. How did you, like, when I saw it, I just said, oh my goodness, she did it.
Well, and I can tell you, Cassandra, which is part of my first chapter, which is grief is selfish. It was very hard because grief is very selfish. I remember many nights laying there just wanting to die. And I think that even my children picked it up, and they would tell us, Mom, you have to go on. You have to live. You have us still here. And I knew that I did, and I know that they love me, but I just wanted to die. But and I know I have my 6 beautiful grandchildren, but I just wanted to die. But what encouraged me is this was my transition from believing in God and really trusting in God. And this is this was a pivotal point in my life where I've been in church all of my life. Got saved as a young girl, became a minister as a young girl, and been preaching for a long time. And I believe I thought I trusted God, but the only way I got through was my trust in God.
And it's funny that you said, like, this was so devastating, but you had been through so many other things. You had ovarian and breast cancer the year after Quincy and I got married.
That's right.
I mean, just so many different things that you've experienced, and I would see you push through, and even your experience made me feel like, oh my goodness, if she can get through this, I know my little stuff I can get through. But when this happened, I was like, okay, whoa, this is heavy, you know.
Right.
And to see just God work in you again.
Right.
It was like, how in the world was she able to bounce back again after I've seen her go through so much? And so many people, I always say that my mom is my hero, and sometimes people say that because it's just their mom. But when you see someone go through life, and they just keep coming back, and they keep trusting in God, and they're transparent and honest, and just, I mean, what do you do? So for me, I'm like, I can't give up, because I've seen you, like you said, you started preaching in your 20s. I've seen you like this since I was a little girl.
Well, and Cassandra, I must say, and I have, and there have been times that I've asked God, why so many major surgeries, and my kids have witnessed me go through so many major surgeries, but the death of my son really um, put me in a place that nothing can turn me around now. I know who I believe. I know in whom I believe, and it was only His trust. We quote, and I thought it was a scripture, but it's not. We quote the saying that earth has no sorrow, that heaven cannot heal. And so I started thinking the only way that I'm going to get through this is to have heaven help me. And so God began to talk me, and that's exactly what this book is about. He talked me through transition after transition, phase after phase, until I got to a place that I could live again. Do I cry? Oh yes,
That was my
I
next
cry
question.
every.
Yeah.
Sometimes I cry almost every day. I do. I have little different memories of him that I have a blanket of his that I kiss every night. I cry. I have pictures in the mirror. I cry every day, but I'm able to live because of the things that God took me through in this book. And that's what I'm sharing with my audience. And then I have my son. I don't want his dying to be in vain. And there are certain times that I hear him, because there were times I got tired. There were times that you guys said, "Mom, where are you in your book? How are you coming?" But there were times, Cassandra, that I could literally feel Angelo saying, "Mom, get up, write my story, write my story." And there is a story that needs to be told.
Do you still have those moments? Because sometimes people who've never experienced something like this, they may not understand that even though you're pushing through, you still can have a moment. I just believe that there's certain experiences that can change you forever, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad change,
Right,
but you may not be the same person. You may be a better person,
right,
but it makes you look at life differently.
right.
So to me that has been my experience. Like, I can't explain.
You can. Cassandra, there are times that I cry, and I still cry so hard that I want to beat somebody up. I want to beat the wall in. One time I was standing in my closet, and I just, for some reason, I was so hurt and angry. I wanted to pull all the clothes down. But then when I looked around, I thought about it, and I said, I have to pick them back up. So I didn't throw them down.
Right.
But there are days that I feel that way. There are days I feel like, why him? He was just getting his life together. He loved his kids, and he'll never get to see his kids grow up. He'll never get to see them graduate or get married. Why him? He was just getting back into church. So there are times that it's still, and any parent can tell you, you daily fight with the why me. Or you daily fight with, I would rather it have been me than him, than my child. I really believe that a parent should not have to bury their child. I would not wish that on my worst enemy. I wouldn't. I don't have any enemies.
Right. But it's so painful.
It's that painful.
You wouldn't want to wish. And I'm going to even say, even for us to talk about it is amazing, because the progress. Like, we have had moments where we couldn't talk on the phone because it was just too much. It was too much because you would have a bad day, I would have a bad day, my sister would have a bad day. Like, it was just too much.
I couldn't even do the interview this morning.
Right. It's just
when you said when you came to tell me that you were ready, I told your dad, I said, I can't do it today. And I started crying again. And even since the book came out, when people asked me to sign, the first day of signing, um, I cried every signature
Because his picture.
because of his picture being in the book. And my husband, he was rubbing my shoulders and he kind of said, "Babe, you got 2 boxes of books in there. Um, you can't cry through every last one of them. Are you planning to cry through every one of them?" And I told him, "I just might. I don't know.
Right,
I just might." But yeah, this is even now is very emotional. Uh, but I feel like there's a message that must be told.
What about people who don't know what to say or know what to do, but they love you? Like when you think back, um, when it first happened, where there's certain things that people did that just you appreciated it so much, or didn't, just because I hear that a lot.
Right.
Like sometimes some people feel like, oh my gosh, that was is too much, or
Right. Right.
I can't believe I didn't hear from this person. And
Right.
so, what your experience? What do you think? Well, I mean, just kind of share that.
Absolutely. Um, if you ever experience it, I'm going to tell you, be patient with people because they really don't uh, um, know what to say and they don't mean any harm.
Right.
And it can be kind of offensive to you. Like I said, even people asking, um, were, were you not expecting it? Who expects anyone to die?
Right.
You know, and especially who expects their child to die? You know, um, and even when they tell you, it's very little. There are things you can do to prepare, but there's very little that you know to
There's
prepare.
nothing that can prepare you for, like, literally watching his the
Last
numbers
breath.
go down,
Right.
and watching that was, to me, I thought that was traumatic. Like, that was a lot. So I feel like when people say that, like, no, like,
Right.
there's no, like, to me,
Right.
not
Right.
for me. Even if it's a person and you're at peace, it's still a different feeling to know you'll never see them again. You
That's
want them to
right.
be at peace, but just it's still something that you have to go through.
Absolutely. And people make statements and they don't mean any harm. And they'll say, you know, and they'll say things like, "Well, he's in a better place," and you're thinking to yourself, "For who?" You know, yeah. And I do understand. Absolutely, I've said the same thing.
Right.
I've said the exact same thing. He's in a better place, no more pain, and you're thinking, you just don't know how I feel.
Right.
And you're right. It's no more pain for that individual,
Right.
but it's the beginning of pain for you. So people don't mean any harm, and you know, and then there's some people that are even dumb enough to say, and I shouldn't use the word dumb,
It's okay.
but they'll say things like, well, he was bad, or he was rotten, or he was this, or he was that.
Still your baby. Still your child.
That's my son.
Right.
And I can tell you, I am the helicopter mom that would fight you for her children. That will fight you for her children. And no matter what.
Most mothers, you're protective.
Right.
You love your kids. I don't know any
Right.
mother who, no matter, even if you had a child that you know, like people say, that had to give it to the Lord.
Right.
You still love your child.
Right,
So,
right.
Yeah.
And my son did. He was not different than a lot of young men. He had his days that he did things. He went places I told him not to go. He did things, tried things I never tried.
Right.
He lived his life to the fullest. He caused me some heartaches and pains and disappointments, but I loved my son. He was still my son, and nothing. I would take him in all of his in all of his ways. I would rather have him here today.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing that can replace it.
Well, I'm excited that at least you have the opportunity to tell a story, And if I know him like I know him, I believe that he would be so happy and so proud.
Absolutely.
And we used to always get upset with him about putting certain things on social media. He would he would have had this out there.
Oh yes.
And so proud. And that's one thing that I would say, that even though he lived his life, he loved it. He loved his family, and
Yes,
he
he
was very
did.
proud
Yes, he did.
of his family, of his dad, of me, of all of us.
Yes, he was.
Loved us. But what? How do you feel now that you have your book? It's you like. How do you feel?
There's a that's a very good question, Cassandra. There's a certain amount of relief for me. It definitely makes me feel like I'm honoring him by using my knowledge of God, and I still get to minister, but I'm also honoring him and telling his story. So there is an amount of relief for me, and there was release each time I wrote a chapter, and each time I thought about um, the growth that God was performing in me. Uh, from it, it means the world to me that the Lord used him to elevate me in the natural and in the spirit. It really, and I know that he would be happy and he would be proud because he was a big fan of his mother.
Definitely. So I'm so happy that you are finally here and you could be on the show. This is I'm proud of you. I'm always proud of everything you do. But when you push through and you finally did it, I'm so happy, and I just feel like you're such an inspiration, not only to me, but for so many other people, so many other parents. Just just so inspirational. How you continue to, like I said earlier, bounce back and to still trust God, and to, my favorite part, of course, is always being honest. Like
Right.
saying, I just don't feel like it today. I'm not okay today.
Right.
But not saying that you don't love God, but you are human and you have your moments. And I think that you definitely, you talk about that a lot in this book. You have a lot of transparent moments, and I think that's important in this day, especially people of God, that we acknowledge that this is the reason why I need him in my life.
That's right.
Yeah, because
That's right.
I couldn't do this without him.
him.
I could not. Sometimes people look at you and they think everything is together and everything is, and it's like, no, he is the center. He is the reason for why he's the reason why I do all of this.
Absolutely.
It's the only way,
Absolutely.
So I'm excited, and I know that this is just the beginning for you. Just from just you and I talking about some of your future plans.
Absolutely.
Professionally, with doing seminars that you're going to offer online.
Absolutely.
And things of that nature, and just some other things that God has shared. And I just after this happened, even though I know you have your moments, I also just saw like a burst of energy, like motivation.
It did.
Yeah, and so I just thank God that in those moments you didn't quit, but you did. You do take time, and you try to really take in what's going on.
Absolutely.
But I'm very encouraged, and when I have my moments, I call you.
Absolutely.
And the counselor, because we believe in counseling.
Absolutely.
But, yeah.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to know if you wanted to share any words of encouragement with someone who may be going through disappointment or loss, or just encourage them the way you went through it. Maybe some of the things you did, like your prayer and your writing and things like that.
Absolutely. So first, I want to say that I'm so very proud of you as well. Being my daughter, we, as a family, we consider ourselves the bounce backs because we have come back from so many disappointments, and and different difficult times in our life. And if I could say anything uh, to encourage you all, that is, God is a very present help in a time of trouble. No matter what the trouble is, no matter what the circumstance is, when no one else is there, you can look to the hills from which comes your help. Your help comes from the Lord. He knows all about you. He made you. Nothing that you do surprise him. Nothing that you go through surprise him. And he has the answers. Uh, Everything that we're going through is a test, but he has the answer key for that test. So look to him. As I said, I've always believed in God, but this was one of those situations that I had to transition from belief to trust.
Yes.
I said, God, I can't do this this one alone. This goes beyond my hooping and hollering. I have to depend on you. I'm going to see if you can really get me through this.
Yes.
If you can get me through grief, you can get me through anything. And he did just that. He taught me how to. One of the things that I started doing, and some of you may already do so, is I began to pray out loud. I began. He told me, Rachel, in all things give thanks. So I always started my prayer out acknowledging him, but then I started thanking him. And one of the things that I thanked him for was Angelo Jr. And that might seem strange, but every night I thank God. I thank him for the time that I had with him, because Angelo was my assignment. I have three assignments, and that's Cassandra, Angelo, and Nicole, that were personally birthed out of me. And I thank him for that assignment. And they're all unique assignments, but I thank God for each and every one. The other thing that I began to do is look to him for direction and begin to analyze his words. For example, we always use the scripture that says that he was wounded for our transgression, he was bruised for our iniquity, and by his stripes we are healed. So we always use that for healing. But when I started reading it, God said, read up higher. And I went up higher, and he said, surely he was acquainted with grief, and that he already bore our sorrow. So I said, oh my goodness, Lord, I've always trusted you for healing, but you was acquainted with grief, and you have already carried this sorrow that I'm trying to carry. You've already took my place. So you know what? I'm getting ready to give you this thing. This is too much for me. I can't carry you.
That's right.
Look, you hit this sorrow. And like I said, I still pain, but
you
I
keep
know
giving it to him.
I keep giving it to him, and I know if I hadn't given it to him, only God knows where I would be today. Only God knows. I would never have got through this. He told me to write. He told me what to write. There were times when I was writing that I was alone. No one heard from me. No one knew what was going on. But he showed me that was part of the path that I had to take. I thought I was alone, but I was never alone. I was never alone. And sometimes you feel like when you're going through, that people get tired of hearing you talk about it. So I couldn't talk to anyone but Cassandra, those in the immediate family. Even though my siblings, they always were checking up on me. I won't take that for granted. But people, like I said, sometimes people don't know what to say, and people don't know what to do. It doesn't mean they're not there. It doesn't mean they don't love you. But God made you, so He knows all about you. And so if you give it to Him, He'll carry it for you. And that's exactly what He did. He carried it for me. He carried it for me. He carried it for me. So it still was mine. I still had to deal with it. But with Him carrying it, it made the load easier for me. So, and I thank Him for it. So now I trust him with everything.
Right.
If he took something that heavy,
Yeah.
then he can. I know the light stuff is nothing.
Yeah.
The last thing that I will say, one of the things that he showed me is grief was just like anything else. And yours might not be grief. It might be depression. It might be disappointment. It might be loneliness. It might be bitterness. It might be heaviness. It might be fornication. It may be whatever. But for God, it's just another thing. Mm-hmm. And he showed me that when he showed me David, when David went out against Goliath, and David said to Saul, and Saul said, "You really think that you can kill this big old giant that everybody is afraid of?" And David let him know, it's your perception, it's what you're looking at, it's what you see. You see a giant, but what you don't know is when I was in the field and when I was keeping my father's sheep, there was a lion and there was a bear that came and they tried to take my father's sheep. And me being a shepherd, I went running after the lion. I didn't let the lion come after me. I went running. Now, who runs after a lion?
Right, right.
He said, I went running after the lion. He said, I took that lion by his hair and I grabbed my daddy's sheep. He said, and for me, this giant is just another bear. So God showed me through his word that grief was just another bear. So just like David conquered that lion and that bear, he conquered that giant. And for me, just like I conquered all the other things in my life, grief, although hard to bear, was just another bear.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed you. This was awesome. I'm so glad you all are watching and we're getting our comments, and we'll try to reply back as soon as possible. But go get this book. I'm going to have the reviews out there. It is amazing. It is amazing. She literally wrote it while she was going through what she was going through, and we are so excited. We are so proud. We'll have all the information, the PayPal, the Cash App. It is on Amazon.
It is.
So I will have all of that information out there. So go get this book and support and keep her in your prayers. I'm excited for her. She's a very strong woman, but we all need prayer.
Absolutely.
So we're going to keep you in our prayers, and we love you. And thank you for joining Cassandra's Corner.
Thank you.
All right.